India Business Report. The year went out to muted celebrations of the final agreement of the Uruguay round of the GATT. 7 years of hard bargaining ended rather messily, with last-minute brinkmanship between several Western powers, in particular the USA and Europe. Those poorer nations, described as from the South, could be forgiven for feeling cynical towards the whole affair. Although 117 nations signed up to the GATT, many Western nations have been busily forming regional trade blocs to support own recession-hit economies. The South has been mostly left out in the cold.
The attraction of New Delhi's winter sunshine wasn't enough to persuade those members of the G15 southern nations to attend their economic summit meeting. 12 cried off, leaving this particular attempt at economic cooperation aborted. But one head of state who did turn up was Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, perhaps because his country, like the host country India, feels left out of any major world trading bloc like the American, Canadian, Mexican NAFTA, the American, Chinese, South Asian APEC, or the European Union.
Until we in the South, we in the third world, we in the developing world are strong enough, as strong in terms of our economies as we are strong in terms of our population, we will, in spite of the size of our population, always remain the underdogs in the world.
Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, envied by third world leaders for transforming Malaysia into an economically powerful country, realized much earlier that trading interests would replace ideological conflict between countries in the 90s. But he seems to have been overtaken by the same vision with which he co-founded the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, a large regional trading bloc allowing preferred access to neighboring markets. Mohamad is now having to fight giant economies like America and China, who have joined hands with ASEAN to set up the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC.
They object to our proposal that we should have an informal grouping called the EAEC, East Asia Economic Caucus, which is again an informal grouping. So on the one hand, they oppose EAEC. On the other hand, they are trying to boost up APEC and to use APEC in order to balance the influence of the European community. Now, APEC was not initially intended to balance anybody. It was just for our mutual benefit.
This turmoil in the trade flows of developing countries could end up cementing new alliances between countries hurt by the collapse of South-South cooperation. Countries like India and Iran, or India and Sri Lanka, with a competitive advantage in commodity trading, could now forge new partnerships. Clearly, pushed against the wall, South countries are beginning to shake off earlier sluggishness and learn lessons from counterparts who not very long ago were their comrades in distress.
The G15 is not just Mexico, it's not just Argentina, it's the whole world of the southern countries with a much larger population than the north. If you take us together, the Asia, China is not in the north, China is in the south, and it's a sympathizer and of course a country that we would rely upon to support policies in the south. The issue is that of imbalance between our economic relations, the north and the south. And if we strengthen ourselves in the south, that in the long run will tell.
Legendary size of India's soft drinks market. The fact is that 500 million Indians have never tasted a bottled drink. The average consumption is a low 3 bottles per person every year, which simply means that the market is virtually untapped. One of the best-known brands in the world, Coca-Cola, has now been trying to re-enter the Indian market for a year, but their choice of a partner seems to be jinxed with 2 aborted tie-ups and an attempted takeover which seems to have suddenly lost steam. Equal mystery surrounds the plans of the market leader Parle and the Indian operations of the American Pepsi-Cola.
This is a 17-year-old bottle of Coca-Cola, one of the last to be made at this plant before Coke was asked to leave the country by the then socialist Indian government. Now, attracted by the new economic liberalization in India, Coke is all set to return. But in the time that Coke was away, the market changed completely. Arch rival Pepsi have established a 3-year-old beachhead. But the real success story is the $200 million domestic parlay, which commands 60% of the Indian market. All market analysts agree that the thunder has actually been stolen by Parle's flagship brand, Thumbs Up. The credit for this is given singularly to the two smart street-fighting owners of Parle, brothers Ramesh and Prakash Chauhan. Although he likes to keep a low profile, the younger Prakash owns this Bombay factory, which is also Parle's largest bottling operation. He is said to have assisted his more aggressive elder brother in dashing off 3,000 written articles and 100 parliamentary questions in an offensive which humbled the mighty international company Pepsi Cola. But people who were expecting the Chauhans to now take on the other cola titan, Coke, were shocked when it became known that they were negotiating a $60 million sellout to Coca-Cola. While the usually media-friendly Chauhans are keeping completely silent, market reports now are that Parle are also talking to Pepsi, quite obviously looking to play off one adversary against the other and get the best deal for themselves.
Neither side has made a statement confirming the statement. So till this is confirmed, I think everything should be taken as speculative.
With the Coke-Pepsi Parle triangle getting curiouser, there is new hope at Pure Drinks, who brought Coke into India in 1949 and were considered to be their natural allies this time around. Pure Drinks had even agreed to kill their existing brands, including their principal brand, Campa Cola, which constitutes 10% of the Indian market. Pure Drinks also promised to dedicate this facility of 1,000 bottles per minute, which is the fastest in India, to the production of Coke. While Coke may have gained from this tie-up, the fact is that Pure Drink's 9 bottlers are no match for Parle's 60, whose distribution network includes 750,000 retail outlets. Quite obviously, Coke are looking to buy into this deep market penetration of Parle's, which squeezed Campa Cola's sales and inflicted a $25 million loss on Pepsi.
Yehi hai right choice, baby.
India is, after all, the second largest populated country in the world, and Pepsi believes very strongly that the Indian investment is an investment for our grandchildren. When you build something for the next generation, it does cost a bit.
In spite of their losses, Pepsi are reported to be pumping in $100 million into their Indian operation. This money is being used to buy out partners' equity and increase their own shareholding to over 90% of capital, set up new bottling facilities, and give more incentives to their 22 bottlers, many of whom are beginning to get restive about losses. But some of this money may also be used for financing Pepsi's takeover of Parle, if that were to happen. The immediate advantage of this deal will be the leg up Pepsi would get in the western region, where Parle are leaders by far, while Pepsi are trailing a poor third behind little-known Dukes. But while Pepsi continue to shrug it away, their biggest advantage from such a tie-up would be to checkmate Coke.
In India, we have a great advantage. We've been here before Coke. We've built a system before Coke. We've got runs on the board. We've got 30% share. And Coke will have to come and start building and go through all the pains of building, which we already have gone through. In terms of competing against Coke, we know how to compete against them. We compete against them in more than 150 countries of the world. And in countries where we come first, we end up being market leaders.
But that confidence could be misplaced, as Coke are ahead of Pepsi in other countries of the Indian subcontinent, including Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And if Coke were to take over Parle, it would be difficult to say who came first. So Pepsi know that either way they are up against a no-holds-barred marketing war, which is why they are not resting on their oars but are coming up with new strategies, like launching the 1-liter screw cap bottle that could expand markets by being more economical for home consumption. Pepsi are also increasing ad spend to strengthen their marketing metaphor, which is aimed at young consumers.
We believe that today in India, in fact, we're seeing a new generation. We're seeing a generation who have absolutely no idea of what Coke is all about, because Coke went in 77, and this whole new generation that is post 77 have had absolutely no association with that brand, whereas for the last 3 or 4 years they've had it with Pepsi. So Coke is just another new brand.
You're a whole new generation. You're loving what you do. I put a Pepsi in motion, but that choice is up to you. Hey.
Clearly, Pepsi will now pull out all the stops, including an upcoming concert tour by the mega star Michael Jackson, to keep the distance between Coca-Cola and India's new generation.
I find it's a little strong, I feel, and that's why, and as it hasn't come yet to our country, and I haven't had it so many times, so I think right now the best drink in India is Pepsi.
With Pepsi also bringing in their fast food restaurants, Kentucky Fried Chicken and Pizza Hut, to add to their dispensing machines, they seem to be clear winners for now in the wayside consumption market. Having been at the receiving end once, Pepsi are now reported to be playing the lobbying game by asking for a government ban on 200 and 300 milliliter bottles, the bottle size with which Coke was supposed to have launched their products in India on the 1st of this month. Since Coca-Cola too was sure to counterattack, India's winter could be the beginning of a long, hot summer of battles between the cola giants. But a final crossover by just one fence-sitter could determine who will replace today's market leader, Coke or Pepsi, in place of Thumbs Up.
We'll be back after the break with the changing times in India's stock markets. Do stay with us. News in a moment, but first the Coke revival. Few multinationals in India excite as strong feelings as Coca-Cola. Since its banning by Socialist Industries Minister George Fernandez in 1977, Coke has been seen as the icon of Western multinational intrusion. This week, though, the giant returned in style, having bought its way back into the market by taking over the current domestic market leader and maker of one of India's best-known drinks, Thumbs Up. But whatever Indians with long memories might think, the new drama is not one of political rejection, but economic survival. For Coke, the enemy is no longer the government, but its age-old rival, Pepsi.
Coca-Cola landed back in India in as much of a dust storm as when it left. In the quiet town of Hathras, in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, the man who had waited 16 years for the event was excited. Neville Isdell, a 27-year company man, the man who had won many battles against the enemy Pepsi. Isdell had been specially brought in from his own enormous sphere of soft drink influence in Northeast Europe and the Middle East to India to weave his magic and vanquish the Pepsi foe, who, it must be said, are better dug in, but haven't the new artillery that the Parle deal has brought Coke.
It is a wonderful marriage. And from the first day that I've met Ramesh Chauhan, we've been on absolutely the same wavelength as we've looked at what can be done with the industry. And he recognized that in order to grow the industry, he needed this alliance. And he's been with us. He's been to look at some of the markets to see what we do, so that we look at how we do that in India, because there's not one formula. You have to adapt. You have to be locally responsive.
From the Agra launch, it doesn't seem to appear that Coca-Cola is supporting any of the brands, because those of you or those of us who were in Agra certainly saw no brands of Parle in the market. In fact, we were quite surprised to see a lot of Parle signboards being covered by Coca-Cola. So if that's the way things will happen in the future, we are thrilled.
Many analysts expect that the Thumbs Up thunder could fast quieten to a lull even as the Coke-Pepsi battle gets stormy. With this push of the button, Coke could have effectively displaced the Chauhan brothers, till 2 months ago the undisputed leaders of India's soft drinks industry, from being brand originators and builders to becoming Coca-Cola bottlers from Bombay and Delhi. Though he put up a brave front, Ramesh Chauhan could well have begun to realize that his former flagship brand, Thumbs Up, will now probably become a niche player, one among the many minor brands Coke owns around the world, like Fresca and Minute Maid.
Nobody should think that he can drive somebody else out of business. Anybody who goes out of business is his own fault and his own lack of effort. Anybody who succeeds, I mean, we can't think that, we are going to succeed just because we've got Coca-Cola. And Pepsi also, I'm sure a lot of people thought that, we've got a Pepsi franchise and we're going to be great guns.
But nothing seemed to diminish Coke's appetite for celebrating the occasion, as this fleet of 6-ton delivery trucks bearing the new image enhancement graphics rolled out on the streets of Agra. The procession took on a local flavor. Neville Eisdell led Coke employees in playing the perfect salespeople, at the same time getting a hands-on feel of the market in the middle of this throng of housewives, school children, and policemen musicians. It seemed as if Coke was trying to capture India by appealing to tradition, distinct from the Western new generation pull of its competitor.
We got the #1 star in the world.
Who is it? Who is it?
We got the #1 star in the world in the Coca-Cola family, and that's called the brand Coca-Cola. And that's all we need.
A very good point made, but it's just a talking point. Why don't they search their hearts and find out how many times they have sponsored events, including football matches? They don't need football matches if Cola was the star.
Can you hear the real thing? It's coming back.
Clearly, this omnipresent red could slowly infiltrate into the Indian market, setting up a bloody marketing war between two multinational rivals competing for 900 million thirsty mouths. One of the weapons in this war is going to be superior technology. Here, at the Hathras facility, Coke claims to have the most modern bottling plant from Germany. However, what remains to be seen is the kind of loyalty Coke could command from Parle's 60 existing bottlers. Already there are reports of some bottlers feeling slighted at the treatment meted out to them when they were put up at inferior hotels and generally kept out of the privileged Coke family at Agra. This could dampen their enthusiasm for making the investments in upgrading their plants, although Coca-Cola and the Chauhans have put an equal equity into a $20 million bottling finance company.
There's very little difference in making Thumbs Up or Coke, because Thumbs Up itself is international. I'll call it international brand. Internationally accepted also, because Thumbs Up is being bottled outside the country also. Limca, Thumbs Up, Limca, and Gold Spot. Maaza, it is being bottled outside. But the thing is, when they come for the survey, they will survey our plants. After survey, they will give us specific norms that to fill Coca-Cola, we require so-and-so process. And for that, you have to invest so-and-so money. Now, it is up to us then we'll first decide that how we are to remain with them.
While the Coke-Pepsi dogfight goes on, smaller players like this 104-year-old Duke & Sons concern are fighting their own corner. This doughty fighter is a $10 million niche player in Western India, who has not only survived, but prospered through Coke's first foray in the 70s and the Pepsi onslaught of the 80s. Run by an 80-year-old patriarch and managed by his 3 sons, Duke is somewhat of an anomaly in today's business environment. But now, even this Lone Ranger is scouting around for a possible tie-up with the British Cadbury's Schweppes, which has internationally popular drinks like Sunkist and Schweppes sparkling lemonade in its range.
We are at best niche marketeers. We are not in the cola mainstream. So hence I don't feel we will be so vitally hit as the mainstream players. Of course, life will be tougher, but there will be opportunities too for us. There will be a greater awareness created in respect of soft drinks, and with that greater awareness, we hope that greater sales will be generated.
The last few months have been epoch-making for India's soft drinks industry. For 18 years, the bastion of strong domestic brands, it is suddenly a battleground in which the Made in India flag has become conspicuous by its absence.
The Coke Parle takeover, while significant in itself, instigates a much larger question. Can Indian business now survive only by hanging on to the coattails of multinationals which are... Welcome back to India Business Report. After China, India is the land of the bicycle. But the bicycle industry has been protected for decades. It meant that hundreds of millions of consumers had little choice. They got what the industry wanted to make, the no-frills utilitarian roadster. It had its advantages. For one, it lasted to ever. But now, fashion has jumped onto the bicycle business.
This is the new bicycle era. Once, all India's 8 million bikes produced each year were dull. But now, leisure and fashion have come together to create an advertiser's dream.
The rock shocks terrain and the bike that tames it. Shock absorbers for perfect control.
The bicycle revolution began 9 years ago when South India-based TI Cycles launched the Sports Light Roadster. TI are now India's second and the world's fifth largest cycle maker. Sports cycles instantly became trendy. No longer beasts of burden, your bike became a reflection of your lifestyle, carefree, offering fun and excitement. And the profits were good. 3 years ago, this racing mountain terrain style bike was launched at 3 times the price of ordinary models. Now, 200,000 Street Cats, Rock Shocks and Hercules MTBs are sold every year to those craving superhero status.
Kapil, Kapil, Kapil.
Hey, BSASLR. Oh yeah, I remember.
Hey, Kapil, that's Kapil.
The teenage group was the first. And later on, after 2 or 3 years, we have seen a lot of spin-off. Like, Aged Man also, he was using a bicycle, a BSASLR. So you went on analyzing what was the reasons of it. Perhaps the internal instinct of that old man also attached to all those novelty values, or the status values, or the personality values. He himself internally thinks, I am a Amitabh Bachchan, I am Kapil Dev.
One hero took a beating. This is Hero Cycles, in the world's record books for producing 3.8 million cycles in 1 year. But it was late into the fashion bike game. Seeing itself as the low-priced volume supplier, its market share soon came under threat. The competition was earning fortunes for its premium brands pushed through heavy advertising. And the dealers were happy too. Markups on the new bikes were 3 times higher. Hero struck back.
It's a very definite and a very intentional plan. A few years ago, more than 90% of our production was in the roadster bicycles. Today it's come down to 70%, and we are aiming to bring it down to 50% to roadsters and 50% of these leisure segment of bicycles.
Bishambar Das Kapoor is the grand old man of the cycle business. He set up Atlas Cycles in the North Indian state of Haryana 43 years ago. At 77, he's trying to reignite his company's fighting spirit, joining a UK company to manufacture and export fancy bicycles. He still thinks ahead of the game, believing you need to find a foreign partner, export and cash in on the fitness and green revolutions, and make leisure, health and exercise bikes that compete in style and performance with the Chinese and Taiwanese.
We are finding a collaborator with whom we can tie up for 2 things. One is that we get some better technical know-how. Secondly, we can make bicycles for them to export, because India could be a very good base to manufacture because our labor is cheaper, and they may be able to economically we can make them for them in their brand and export them.
Among the most modern plants in India is Avon Cycles. It cost $32 million to produce bikes in the Punjab for export to France, Singapore, Nigeria and Mauritius. Recently, this company found a market niche. It turned the three-wheeled cycle rickshaw into a leisure vehicle for Americans, Danes and Germans who want to joyride. But it's a serious business.
Our strategy has been that we have gone in for the raw material, making of the raw material. We are making cold rolled steel strips, steel tubes, and we are making more components in-house to keep our prices down.
Low technology and poor component supply have dogged production of the turn-of-the-century model that still holds 80% of the market. Still under $30 each, it is nevertheless a lifetime investment for many poor. The low-income, price-inflexible market has kept price increases to just 3 in 20 years, and the industry backward.
In fact, raw material is one of the reasons that the bicycle industry has stayed the way it has. This distinguishes the Indian bicycle from the international bicycle, because today increasingly different alloys, different substitutes to steel, and lighter materials, plastics, Kevlar and other things are being used, which we've not been able to use in India because they're just not available. Neither the materials nor the processes to handle those materials are available here.
In India, there are still people who doesn't have bicycles. They can't even afford the normal bike. So we can't stop the production of the standard roadster model bicycles, because in India and maybe in other African countries also, this bicycle still remains the basic need. It is a necessity. So we just can't shift to the new models 100%. We are gradually going towards new models, but still today about 70-75% of our production is still standard roadster model bicycles, and which I think will remain for another 20-25 years.
The program, but first another financial embarrassment: transport. Although most of India's goods are transported by road and rail, the government is today spending on them as a proportion of its total capital, or what in India is called plan expenditure, a half of what it did 30 years ago. Strapped for cash, the road and rail systems are in a state of disrepair and heading for a major crisis.
Every year, Indian railways carry less freight than they target. This year, 11 million tons less, which means a revenue shortfall measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. While there have been steep increases in the amount of freight carried in past years, profits have been denied by increasing cost of operation and artificially low passenger fares. This has meant falling investment, 100 million a year, and not nearly enough new track to cope with increasing demand. The railways haven't even enough money to pay for the wagons they need.
Our number of units that is given to us, it has become from 24,000 to 21,000, and now the railway is saying they will procure only 20,000, which means we are supplying no more than 60% of our capacity.
Slow growth in capacity and an inflexibility to cater for ad hoc loads have led to a significant shift away from rail to road services. Rail used to carry 90% of all cargo, now it has less than half.
First of all, the roads are in a deplorable condition, and they will get worse, worse joke if this type of a shifting from rail transport to the road transport keeps on occurring. We as a nation will have an inbuilt block to our progress.
$300 million electronics company, Philips India, operates this warehouse in northern India. With dealers and stockists spread throughout the country, Philips find it crucial to make timely product deliveries, because in their market, even a consumer with a strong brand preference does not like to wait for his purchase, simply switching brands if the one he wants is not available. Companies like Philips today prefer to pay 5% more in transporting goods by road rather than take a chance by rail.
They have their own standard. They have their own specification for packing materials. Whereas when we ship the same good by road transport, we don't have to face that kind of difficulty. And we have seen the item which we have transferred by road transport, there is hardly any damage in any packages. But same consignment, when we have sent to railways, we found in number of occasions
damages are there.
This has placed an almost intolerable burden on Indian roads as the number of freight trucks have gone up 20 times in the last 40 years, while the road length has increased less than 5 times.
Long distance traffic freight traffic is coming onto the road. It is damaging our roads to such an extent that we are unable to cope with repairing the roads and keeping them in good shape.
Less than half of the country's 2 million kilometers of roads is surfaced. Large national highways constitute just 2% of the total, and many of these are in a dangerous condition, leading to accidents